Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a great guest today, Eddie Gallagher. Thanks for dressing up.
Hey, no problem, man. I'm doing my best here for you.
I like to see the ink, though. How you been doing? It's been 2 weeks since I've talked to you, so I feel like
dude. It's been good, man. Just been staying busy, you know.
Yeah, do you guys got anything new going on right now?
Well, first thing is, we're rebranding or sort of revamping the whole FAFO brand that we got going on. So we're breaking apart from Nine Line and sort of taking it in a new direction. So we're working on that. That should all be coming out next month. And then obviously the foundation keeps us busy. So we just got done helping out Catherine Arnett, that female Marine that was locked up for refusing the vaccine. So that took quite a bit of overtime over the past 2 weeks. So, yeah.
Can you, I've seen that story popping up. Can you give us some background on that and kind of what happened?
Sure. So, I had a buddy reach out, my buddy Gio, who was on my last deployment, informed me that this female Marine was in the brig at Miramar, which is where I was locked up at. They had her locked up in Japan first and then transferred her there. So she was, I think, detained or locked up for like 113 days. And when we got the notice, she was in solitary confinement. And her mom, nobody has heard from her in a while. And the only message that the Marine Corps gave her mom was she's doing better now. She's eating bread and water. So that was pretty fucked up, for them to put something out like that. So we ended up digging into it, seeing what was really going on. And basically she had refused the vaccine. She was a, I wouldn't say, I don't know, stellar Marine, but she had a pretty clean record up to that point. And then there was a trend after she refused the vaccine where they just kept coming after her for little things, pretty much punishing her for not taking the vaccine, even after the mandate was lifted. They tried to kick her out of the Marine Corps. She refused. She said she didn't want to leave, so they threw her in the brig. And so at that point, we had gotten involved. We started calling, some high-ranking officials, people in Congress, getting their attention on it. And once the Marine Corps found out that this story was about to blow up, they literally released her out of the brig at like 9 p.m. with nothing, no clothes. They'd already taken her pay away, no command to really check into, really no directions. They were just like, and you're out. So we stepped in, got her a place to stay in the meantime, and then really started planning on what we were going to do going forward. What we found out is, her being locked up for 113 days had really rattled her. I believe she was 23. So instead of pushing forward in that campaign, we were like, hey, let's put a halt to this and let's get her the help she needs before we really start putting her in the forefront. And I think during that time she came out, we got her in Balboa, which is a naval hospital there, just to get checked out. And then she came out of there and she was like, hey, I want to take this on my own. I appreciate your help. And I'm not going to need your guys' help going forward. And so that's all we really could do. We're like, okay, you sure? She's like, yeah. So we were like, all right, good luck going forward. We put a message out, I believe, last week that we are no longer behind her. I mean, we still are supporting her, but the Pipehitter Foundation is no longer running her campaign. So she decided to take it on her own. But in the end, we're glad that we did what we did. We got her out of the brig. We brought attention to it. And hopefully she ends up in good hands.
Yeah, the latest I heard was that she's going to be processed for a general discharge under honorable conditions, but which doesn't sound that bad. But the reality of that situation is you lose education benefit, you lose the GI Bill under those circumstances.
Oh yeah.
So this woman who's by the way, the Marine Corps dropped every single charge against her. There are no charges against her. They're just going to give her a general discharge, take her benefits away after imprisoning her for a third of a year and not paying her the money for serving her country. I mean, it's this is probably so far as I can tell, maybe there are other examples that I haven't seen, but this is the most egregious version of the military trying to enforce this stupid COVID bullshit.
But yeah, of course, it's all, it's a fear-based tactic that they used. And, they use her as an example to let everybody else know, if you do not conform, this is what's going to happen to you. And we will not only take your pay away, but, ruin your career. And, the once that happens, and the ability to bounce back from that once you get out, it's a tough road. So, I mean, I'm hoping that she gets the help that she needs, and that she has good people around her supporting her.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's pretty wild, man.
it is. It's nothing new though. I mean, obviously we found all that out when I was going through my ordeal, just how that system works. That is a corrupt and broken system, and it just seems like there's no accountability. And that, obviously we've seen that over the years from the top military leadership. It's rules for thee, but not for me, and they literally will do and say anything to demonize somebody who stands up for their beliefs. So, the best we can do is sit there and help each of these individuals who are being punished in some form or fashion by the UCMJ, unjustly punished. And it's there's a lot of people out there. We're a small organization, but we do our due diligence to help out everybody when they fill out a grant. So
yeah, it's really disappointing. I mean, pretty much every branch of the military that you join, one of the first things you do, even during the M processing part, is you get inundated with acronyms about principles that we stand for, right? I mean, that's what it is: honor, integrity, self-sacrifice, things like that.
yeah,
Selfless service, actually, I think is what it is in the Army. But very rarely do you see somebody willing to take a principled stance, and when somebody does, very frequently they get hammered for it by command, whether it's big Army or even their local command. One notable example are the guys in special forces units in the Army who got tired of watching Afghans rape little boys and started to say and do stuff about it. And then they got disciplined by the military for it. It's like, there is some level of cultural awareness where it's like, if somebody prepares their food a different way, I'm not going to bug them about it, because when in Rome, right? But when you're raping kids, I feel like maybe that's the time to step up and say something. And there's no, if our mission as a country, if America's mission is such that kids can get raped and that mission still be accomplished, then I'm not comfortable with that, no matter what the fucking mission is. That's got to be a red line in the sand. But it's an extreme example, but that shit happened quite a bit in the middle 2010s, especially.
Oh yeah. The perfect example is my last deployment in Mosul, right? So we were partnered up with the Emergency Response Division, which is this Iraqi unit that really was unvetted. They've finagled a way for us to partner up with them to clear the city of Mosul, and we lived with them for 6 months in this little shithole house. And the room they had right attached to us next door was where they brought potential prisoners or ISIS members, and we would go to sleep every night listening to them get raped, tortured. You could actually look through a peephole and watch what they were doing. And it was one of those things where everybody sort of knew it was going on, but nobody really talked about it, because they were like, hey, this is about accomplishing the mission. And I know a lot of guys had some issues, with it, and they had to deal with that afterwards, just from having to watch and listen to that every night and not really be able to do anything about it. Because obviously we have rules that we abide by, but then somehow when we get partnered up with a force that has no rules, we're supposed to just turn a blind eye to accomplish the mission. And I think that happens pretty frequently.
Yeah, well, fuck that, right? Before your duty to the mission is your duty to humanity, right? I mean, that's what we always talk about that shit. The thing that separates us from them is the fact that we play by rules and shit. And one of my rules is, if you fuck with kids, you die. I mean, we should have executed every single one of those motherfuckers until the practice stopped, frankly.
Oh, I'm with you on that. I mean, but unfortunately you saw with I think it was, wasn't the Green Beret that got charged?
Yeah, in 2016, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and then again, that sets the precedent, right? Like, you see this guy getting hammered for doing the right thing, and then everyone else is second guessing, hey, well, yeah, I don't agree with this, what's going on, but if I step in and do anything, I'm going to get punished as well.
Yeah, his name was Charles Martland. He was an E7, and he beat up an Afghan militia commander for having a little boy chained to his bed as a sex slave. And uh, his team leader, the captain, was relieved of command because of it. He lost his job because of it. And I assume that the Afghan militia commander is still out there raping children, right? And
Oh,
that so
sure.
so I mean, like, is that who we are as a fucking country, that we allow shit like that to happen? Is it who we are as a country that we try to force vaccinate somebody with a vaccine that hasn't been tested, that they didn't even test to see if it worked or not? I mean, now we know this now, right? They didn't test to see if it would actually prevent transmission or infection. They just like, oh, this is meets the general requirements for a vaccine, and here you go, right? And now what we know now is that it fucking didn't do anything. I mean, it did
No.
for a very short amount of time for some people, but for the vast majority of people, and in a lot of cases was a bigger risk than it was a benefit.
Yeah, it's causing complications in some individuals that take it, and then all of a sudden we have this sudden death syndrome that's going on, and and I can't understand how people can't figure this out. Like, the vaccine is given, everybody's taking it, but then there's a part of the country that's questioning it, and they're like, hey, this hasn't been tested. It's all common sense stuff. Like, no, I don't want to receive it. But then, months later, you start having these sudden deaths happen, which are
Mm.
being reported. Of course, nothing is correlated to the vaccine. It's just suddenly, sudden death, and a lot of athletes. Who knows how many military members died from it? Because that's not going to get reported. And I mean, I still am like trying to figure out what the end game is with that whole conspiracy. I'm like, why did they force that upon the military and all these members?
Well, it seemed like it
Um,
was. I think it's a couple of things. Um, the first thing is just you couldn't exempt them because the rest of the population wouldn't take it, right? I think that's part of
yeah.
it. And then the second part is, the only reason they did any of the shit in the first place was to make money for their buddies. The
Oh,
same
for
the
sure.
same as the fucking wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We just did that shit to make money for people's friends, right? Um,
Yeah.
and then I think the third one, I think the prosecution part of it, the way they went after people. One, it's just to generally crush dissent, but I also think it was a coordinated effort to get like free thinkers out of the military, out of policing as well. I think in a lot of major cities, I think they wanted to get people who are going to question things out of the way so they can have, and that's what you're going to do, right? Like if you're building an army, you look for a certain type of person, you put them together, you train them. If you're looking for an army that'll do shit and not question it, that's a different thing, right? That's like
Yeah.
you're talking about the Schutzstaffel and things like that. At this point, you're talking about Gestapo. That's the kind of person you're looking for, somebody who will follow orders. You know what I mean? But that's not what we're trained to do. As a matter of fact, the UCMJ is pretty clear about not the right, but the responsibility of an individual in the military to refuse an unlawful order. And we're encroaching on pretty bad territory here because we're deep in this personality cult in America where, we're not run by principle anymore. We're run by fucking leaders and their opinions about things, and their opinions are fucked, right?
Yeah. I just had this conversation yesterday. I was actually in an interview and was asked, I was on there with some general, and they were asked, like, what do you think the problem is with leadership in the military, and should we have enlisted? I think there's one of the solutions that they came up with was like, hey, well, should we have an enlisted advisor attached to like an attaché attached to each admiral or general
Mm.
that came back from combat or deployment, that actually is able to have influence on their fit reps and evals, and maybe they would listen. But to me, I'm like, well, that's putting a band-aid over a bullet hole. I'm like, the real problem here is the way that these officers are brought up in all these academies. It's a very elitist movement going on, that they can do no wrong, and then also it's the way they promote or make rank. So as at a certain rank, I believe it's like 05 it becomes political, and they have to get their promotion signed off by
Right.
Congress, in some form or fashion. So then now you're dealing with these officers who are about, just pushing the agenda of whatever congressman is going to sign off on their promotion, and that's what creates yes men, which we've seen obviously over the past 2 decades of war, that were constantly lying to the presidents or whoever else was asking questions, but they don't get the ground truth from the enlisted who are actually doing the job, who are giving their blood, sweat, and tears. So I'm like, my solution, I'm like, they need to revamp the whole system of how these officers get promoted, how their fit reps get written. They actually should have some experience in leadership. And right
Yeah.
now we can see, with the people that are up top, Millie and Austin, there's no experience there. And I don't care how many ribbons, Millie wears on his uniform, because I know 90% of those weren't really earned by him, but probably by enlisted below him. And it's proven, we saw it during the Afghan withdrawal. Like, my 5-year-old could have came up with a better plan.
Every infantry paratrooper private could have done that better, because immediately, I mean, so just by exposure to the operational environment, that grabbing up the fucking the division or brigade ready force or whoever it happens to be, and deploying them on short notice, that's a contingency plan. That's not an operation, right? That's a fucking frago, basically. Like, we're
Yeah.
things have gotten fucked up and now we need to do this. But that was our first plan to do that. That was the first time any planning actually took place. It was like, oh shit, we fucked it. Oh, you're telling me that we pull all the air out of Afghanistan and then just hope for the best with these Afghan dudes who have been secretly trying to kill us this whole time, right? And they're gonna fucking stand up to the invasion coming from the Taliban. By the way, the Taliban's already taken over 40% of the country at this point, and that didn't hit the press. Between March and June, they took over 40% of the goddamn country, and then nobody reported on that, or nobody knew. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah.
Well, again, going back to being a yes man, you're having these officers who are over there telling the president and whoever else that, yeah, the Afghans can take care of themselves. They're fully trained, they're fully bought in, ready to defend their country. And as you know, be working with them, same as me, like, it's complete bullshit. Yeah. It's like these dudes don't care. You might have, 2 out of every 10 that are like actually there for the right reason. And I've had some great guys that we worked with, but that's, like I said, 2 out of 10. The rest of them are just there for a paycheck, and they'll gladly accept a paycheck from the Taliban as well. Like, there's no belief system over there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, this is the kind of environment you get from, this hero worship culture we're in, and it's political as well. It's like, oh, I'm a MAGA person, or I'm a progressive. It's like, what are the principles you believe in? And how does that guide your fucking day-to-day life and your decision making? I don't give a fuck who you're a fan of. I don't care what team you think you play for. We all play for America, right? We're supposed to be doing that. So yeah, that's the reason we started the show in the first place, is the idea that you can sit around and bitch and moan about your rights and wait for somebody else to secure them for you, and you are going to be a subject under their rule, and you're going to be caught in places where you have to defend them even when they're wrong, right? Because that's your team. Or you can perform the responsibilities required of you to secure those rights yourself, and that's the definition of a citizen, right? That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work anyways.
Yeah.
And so we develop this list of principles. I can't remember who said it originally, but there's this quote. Let me see if I can find it. Men did not love Rome because she was great. She was great because they had loved her, right? That's the commitment. So people talk about the greatness of America, and it only is such because it's like Tinkerbell, because we believe it, right? And because when you believe something, your actions support that, when you truly believe it. So we come up with this list of principles that I think, are pretty good guidestones for how to be, an honorable and productive member of any society, but certainly here. And the first one is just based on our enlistment oath. I'll support and defend liberty against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Like this idea, and we're seeing it with this Russia-Ukraine shit too. Any criticism of Ukraine or the United States action that's somehow pro-Russia, it's like, no, I want my country to be the right. I want them to be in the right. And right now they're not. They're fucked up. And wanting to correct that, it's like criticizing American foreign policy or even domestic policy and saying that is anti-American is like a fireman putting out a house fire and saying he's anti-house. It's fucking stupid, right? It doesn't make any sense. But that's the very base level of political discourse that's going on right now. And I wonder, when we're going to get back to something approaching that, where it's like somebody in American politics fucks up or does something stupid, or an idea that's permeated is fucking dumb and doesn't support American ideals. And people on both sides are like, no, we're not doing that. Right. But I just don't see it anymore.
No, it's, I can't, it's been overstated, I think, over the past year. Like, we are in weird times, difficult times right now. This country is divided because people let the media and the government divide us. They sit there and listen to everything that the media and government spewing out, which, as much information that we are able to attain these days through social media and everywhere else, I feel like we are still we are so less informed than before, because it's just it's all a bunch of propaganda for both sides. So I think they've lost the ability to think for themselves, to critically think through these issues and take a step back and just gain perspective on what is really going on. People just want their information. They want the clickbait and like, okay, my decision's made. I'm on this team because of this. And also the thing is, like, when you join a team, whether it's the left or right, you can't have any of your own views. And if you speak out and you're like, oh, this is what I agree with, and it might be on the right side, then the left side is going to completely shun you. And the right does it as well. It's, if you have any leftist views, they'll be like, oh, you're out. You're not on our team. And really, it's like, dude, we should be able to think what we want. And that's the thing that's the beauty of America, is you can have your own values and belief systems. I don't care what religion you are, what race. You can have those. You can stand up for them and believe in them. But at the same time, like, I'm a conservative Christian, right? I have Christian values. That doesn't mean I'm going to force everybody else to have those as well. It's like, that's how I live my life. That's how I raise my family. And yeah, that is like, the group of people that I do hang around, because we share the same similar values, but that doesn't mean I hate everyone else with different values. I'm like, that's what the beauty of America. Like, you can have your own values, and, I won't shove them in your face and you don't shove them in mine. It's just the same as being in a platoon when you're in the military. Everyone thinks, like, special operations, that we're all, clones of each other and we all think the same way, but that's the complete opposite. You can go into a team room, everyone has different values and belief systems, but we're all there for a similar mission, which is, whatever it is, going, deploying to Iraq or Afghanistan. I truly believe that's what, America is. We have a similar mission. It's to keep America what it is and what it stands for. And we can all have different views and still be on the same team. But I think we've lost that.
Yeah, it's why the founders used the phrase "a more perfect union," right? It's like in that statement, we're saying that we think we've got a good idea, but it's going to take some time to do this, and it's going to take constant vigilance to maintain it, which is why Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. But we have reached this point now where the greater political discourse in America does reflect the military, right? This binary, you have to think one, not that on each issue you have to think one way or another, because usually that is how it is. Decisions are made in a binary fashion. Sometimes it's a gray area. But when the entire playbook is binary, right? When you have to agree with these 12 talking points or these 12 talking points, and if you vary from any of that stuff, then somehow you're a Russian agent, or you're a fucking a libtard, or whatever fucking stupid shit people say. That is not a productive discourse, and it's not going to be successful, right? So map that onto, because you have to be a sycophant to think that way, right? You have to be more afraid of being criticized or outcast by your peers than you are proud of doing the right thing. That's a bad combination of stuff, right? That's not a good fucking place to be as a human being. Imagine that mapped onto medicine, right? Imagine if you're in if doctors disagreed wildly on what your condition was and how to treat it. That would make you feel pretty shitty, and it wouldn't be very productive for you or your treatment or anything. Well, we kind of saw that right over the last couple of years, where there were a few doctors who were like, this doesn't really make any sense. But the vast majority of people either capitulated because they didn't want to stand out and lose their job or get criticized, or they were on board with the greater, let's fucking force everybody to do shit. You can see how rapidly that all comes together and becomes a stone rolling downhill that is very difficult to stop. And what we don't have is resilience against that anymore, because it is anytime any free thinker pops up, somebody shows up and tries to shoot them down.
Yeah. Well, they get canceled, mm-hmm. right? They're like, you're done. And I think, what the one silver lining over the past 2 years, and I always try and look for the silver lining when we're in situations like this, is, there's more and more people figuring this out. So like and it's getting out on all these podcasts, right? So, I mean, look at it. I really think, Rogan did a hell of a job, like bringing people on, bringing those doctors on that had those beliefs that the vaccine was, not what everybody was saying it was, and letting them speak out, because all of them got canceled. And Rogan has probably the biggest platform in the world. So, I mean, to be able to spread that information that way was awesome. And I think that's really what we're going to head towards is, these independent media sources that are able to actually put out what, the truth, or just get a different perspective on what is actually being told to us through mainstream media. And I'm just hoping that, that grows more and people can start seeing through the bullshit that's constantly being fed to them. But then again, you never know. All I do, man, is I pray about it. I pray about this. I pray for this country. And in the end, it is in God's hands. I'm like, dude, I don't have faith in our government making the right decisions. And then you can really drive yourself crazy when you get to that point. Like, dude, what is going on here? Like we said before, like you're just waiting for something to happen. And in the end, man, I give it up to God, and I'm like, dude, just help me take care of my family, take care of what's in front of me, help me affect my community in a positive way, and that's really the key of what I tell people, man. I'm like, get your own house in order. And then once you have your own house in order, then you can start affecting your community. Once you start affecting your community, then you can start branching out from there. But it's not until you have your own house in order can you really start making changes.
Yeah. Well, when times are tough, when the economy's bad, when there's disease, famine, war, there is this tendency for people to become a lot more self-centered. It's something of a survival instinct almost, you know what I mean? Like when things aren't going well, which is to some degree understandable. We're still animals out here, but the way to get back from that isn't just to treat the symptoms necessarily. Like, you want to treat the disease. And one of the reasons that this kind of stuff happens, as I mentioned before, with that quote, the reason Rome is great is because people love it. The reason America was great before is because people loved it. And as such, their actions aligned with the fact that they loved it. It's like broken window theory almost, but on a grander scale, So that's why another reason, we talk about these principles. The second one after the general, I'll support and defend liberty, is I'll do something every day to help my country, my countrymen, or all men. That's something that I think, like when you talk about resetting, what am I doing wrong? What are the fundamentals of life? Because we're not going to overhaul the government in a single day. We're not going to end famine. We're not going to fix the economy. We're not going to, we're not going to end disease. all today, but you can do one thing every day, right? And when you
Yep.
do it, when you do it and other people see you doing it, they start doing it too. And at some point, you reach a critical mass. You know what I mean? There's enough people doing the right thing that shit starts to turn around a little bit. And the other thing that happens is that uh, you become a lot less tolerant of people who are not doing the right thing. And it starts slow, right? So first you just ignore them, you stop hanging out with them, you kick them out of your lives. But then you start saying something like, "Hey, Bo, you're fucked up." You know what I mean? And it happens even at the smallest level. If there's a guy on your team, guy in your platoon, or some shit that's fucked up, somebody's gonna say something, right? Because it matters, and we think it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But what you accept, what you allow to happen around you, matters. It is tacit approval to stand by idly and say nothing when people are fucked up and they're hurting other people. You can't do it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's a great point. And, to see what's going on now. I mean, take for example, and I know it's a very small percentage. It's like point whatever, but with this whole
Mm-hmm.
transgender thing going after the kids, right? And I had this conversation, I think with Baker Levitt when
Mm-hmm.
he came on the podcast, and he brought up the point. He's like, dude, you realize that's like 0.1%, so it's really not that big. And I was like, well, every organization, every terrorist organization starts off 0.1%, right? And if you sit there and let them do what they want, they will grow and it will get bigger and bigger. And I'm like, and that's why I feel like we need to speak out again. If you do not believe in what's going on, and we cannot tolerate it, you have to say something, and you can't just. I believe the past. I don't know how long we've been tolerant. We've been tolerant of all this bullshit, which is why we're in the point where we are now, where we're letting kids mutilate themselves at a young age. And if you thought 10 years ago, like, hey man, this is what's going to happen in 10 years, you'd be
Mm.
like, what the fuck? No way.
Yeah.
And it's happening now because that's what being tolerant does. You need to call out what's wrong. And and I know there's people that are out there that believe somehow that it's the right thing to do, or they believe in the whole. I mean, I in my opinion, they're mentally ill and
Mm.
they need help. It's just it's some kind of a symptom that they have. But I'm like, in my case, no, I'm going to speak out about it because I don't want this affecting my children. And now you're bringing it into my home. You're on my lawn now. Now we have a problem.
Yeah. What did Winston Churchill used to say? Appeasement is feeding the crocodile, hoping he eats you last.
Yeah, it's
You
perfect.
know what I mean? It's like, what are we really doing here? Like, if your neighbor's house is on fire, it's like, well, it's not my house. Well, it's going to be, right? It's going to
Yeah,
be very soon unless you do something. And I think I really like that analogy because it speaks to the fact that we do have a tendency to think about ourselves first, but it is at our own peril. I mean, generally speaking, in life, every meaningful thing you ever do is going to be in the service of somebody else, your family or your community or your nation or whomever it is. That is typically the case. Very rarely do you do anything for yourself that's truly meaningful. And even to yourself, you may feel like it at the time, but that kind of stuff doesn't really fulfill you as a human being. And it's just evolutionary biology. To survive, we had to work together for 2 million
yeah,
years of human DNA now. We've had to work together. Like it's bred into you literally over millions of years that you have to survive. You have to become a member of your community. You have to talk to people. You have to argue with people. You have to fight them. You have to, be close to them. And eventually you got to trust them and work with them. You know what I mean? That it's part of who we are as people. And to me, when I see these, politicians and media people trying to divide people, that is an attack on that. To me, that is a human right violation, right? It is an attack at the core of what it means to be a human being. And we don't take it seriously. We get scared or angry and just take our own side's point of view immediately, because it's
yeah.
easier, it's more comfortable. And when does doing what's more comfortable ever fucking work? It just doesn't work, man.
Never. Yeah, you're not going to grow if you're doing stuff that's comfortable all the time. You literally are not going to grow as a person if you do not face uncomfortable situations and deal with them.
Mm,
I know that the sayings in special operations, it's what is it? get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm.
Like, because we're constantly pushed, to a limit, and we're constantly trying to better ourselves as operators and going to all these schools. Well, you take that and transition it when you get out. And that's what I really try and do is, I teach these classes at the range I'm at here. But, when I have these people out, I give them talks like, hey, if you're not waking up every day, at least picking one thing that you're not good at or you're uncomfortable doing and attempting to do that, then you are not going to grow as a person.
Mm.
And I'm like, and yeah, sometimes it's through pain, sometimes it's through frustration, and we all go through it. It's not like, and I'm not preaching like I'm the perfect person. I go through it too, man. I got my times where I'm like, dude, I don't want to do this. This is, this makes me uncomfortable, or this is bullshit. But in the end, I'm like, you know what? I should be doing this because it does make me uncomfortable, and I'm going to grow as a person from it. And I think people need to take on that a lot more.
I feel like people have a hard time self-motivating. And it's because there's no purpose in that. There's no purpose in doing stuff for yourself, right? So when I talk to young guys, or particularly dudes who are, have families, like you're not enjoying your job. You're not physically fit. You're overweight. It's affecting you, and it's affecting how you raise your family. I can tell you for a fucking fact that it is. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so when you wake up in the morning and you know you need to go do some fasted cardio or lift some weights or some shit before work, and you don't feel like it, that's not about you, motherfucker. You know what I mean? It's not about you. It's about your fucking family. It's about all of us collectively, right? Like I think it does help if you frame things that way. If you start thinking about, well, I got to do this for somebody else, because that's how we are in the military. When you first join, you're all gung ho, blah blah blah, for my country, but it very quickly turns to this, I guess the animal chasing you, whatever's behind you, motivating you, goes from just this general, broad, vague understanding of patriotism, or maybe you just want to go fuck some shit up. Just the, general male aggression needs to be exercised. It turns quickly from that into, I don't want to let my team down, right? Like that becomes almost something pathological for us. I think it's like, because you'll hear stories of guys who are like, yeah, I didn't go on that raid and, some shit went down and I'll never forgive myself for it. I think that becomes the core motivator for a lot of us. And I don't think it's unique to warriors either. I think that's just how human beings are built. Like you don't want to disappoint the people around you. And
no, yeah, especially the people that you love.
Yeah. And that's a really good and powerful motivator. So stop thinking about, if you're trying to better your position, stop thinking about how it affects you. I think it's a really good place to start.
Yeah, set the example for your family, set the example for your kids. And a perfect example of that is, when I had got out my first year of transition, it was rough, man. I was pissed. I was angry, especially with all the crap that had happened to me. I went into that almost self-serving, like, I'm pissed. I want to do something about this, but I couldn't. And for about 5 months, I was around my house. I was working on the book and everything. And my daughter, I went to her room to talk to her, and she literally looked at me and she's like, I don't even want to be around you. Like, you are an just angry, depressed person. And it wasn't like I was lashing out. It was just on my face, the way I carried myself. And that is when I was like, you know what, I have this has to change, which is the big decision when I went to go do the psychedelic treatment. I mean, that was it for me. I was like, dude, that's it. I'm going to go make this leap. I need to make a change for my family for the better. And the man is supposed to be the leader of the family, right? You're setting the tone. And if you're unable to do that, because you're sitting there feeling sorry for yourself, or, like I was doing, just trying to come up with plans to get revenge, it's like, no, it's not going to happen, dude. Just, heal yourself first and then start taking care of your family.
So it was the interaction with your family that was kind of a wake up call, that you needed to drop what you were doing and go deal with your bullshit, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I mean, and that's the thing, and so we're all built the same. Like I could suffer forever. We could
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
miserable
yeah.
forever.
Oh yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, whatever. This is me.
Especially dudes, we're idiots. We'll go 20 years without going to a fucking doctor. It's so stupid.
No, exactly. Yeah, we are. We're morons, and but it also what makes us good at what we do,
Right.
right? We're not, we don't complain. We're like, dude, I can suffer in silence and get the job done. But at the same time, that's not the right answer when you get out. And yeah, that interaction I had with my daughter, and I had one more interaction with my son when we were in the car, and he just looked at me and he was like, are you okay? And this is my, at the time, 10-year-old son, like legitimately asking me and looking me in my eyes, like, are you okay? And I knew, I was like, dude, this is it. I have to go do something. It's written all over me.
Mm.
Everybody knew that I wasn't doing well, even though in my, like we talked about, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good. But I'm not, I was far from it.
Mm.
So yeah, that was the big decision point I made to go do the Ibogaine and all that.
Mm.
And that was a game changer, in some form.
How did you feel in that moment when your daughter doesn't want to be around you and your son is who shouldn't even know how to ask that question? You know what I mean? Which is,
Yeah.
kudos to him, but how do you feel right then?
It's like someone ripped my heart out and threw it on the ground and just stomped on it over and over. I mean, it was probably the most painful thing to hear coming from your own kids, And, my wife's a very intelligent, smart person. And she would always tell me, like, there's something wrong with you. Of course, I'm like, whatever. There's always been something wrong with me, over the past 20 years. And there was. But yeah, when you hear it from your kids, you're like, dude, all right, this has got to change.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, it was a painful thing to hear, a painful thing to go through with them, just because you don't want them to see you as, your ego gets in the way. You're like, you want them to see you as the warrior that you think you are and like a protector. But when your kids are like, dude, no, you're not. Like, there's something wrong with you, and you need to get fixed. I think that's a huge wake up call. And I needed it. It was one of those things where I'm like, I'm glad it happened. And it got me the help I needed.
Yeah. There's this old saying, I actually heard it on The Sopranos once. I can't remember exactly how it goes, so I'll paraphrase, but it's something to the effect of a bird with a broken wing doesn't go around feeling sorry for itself. You know what I mean? It just tries to remedy the situation.
Yeah.
And not to be reductive, but if your weapon was fucked up, you would just fix it. You wouldn't sit around moping about the process or worry about how people would feel about it. You would just fix the goddamn gun,
Yeah.
And what was it like?
But
Oh, go ahead.
I also think, when we were in, and I say this, I'm like, we're very situationally aware. Like, we're situationally aware human beings or operators when we're in. We're constantly looking to see, what the tone is in the room or wherever we go. Like you said, our weapon's busted. Like, yeah, I'm going to fix it. But we are the least self-aware of, like, how fucked up am I when it comes to, mental health. So I think that's one thing that, I had to process and go through when I got out, is actually becoming self-aware and being like, okay, I do have emotions. My only emotions were either I'm good or I'm fucking pissed and I'm ready to go, do something. And it wouldn't matter what situation happened, and obviously being around death all the time, it's like you completely go numb. And that was another prime example. And this was when I was in my wife's mother had drowned unexpectedly my last workup. And we got the call in the morning. And I remember looking, my wife got the news and there was no emotion. It was just like, I was just going through, okay, we need to get you a ticket, fly you out there, so you can take care. But I knew I should have felt something, but I was like, dude, I don't feel a thing right now. And so those are, that's from dealing with all the bullshit that we go through in our careers and having our friends die and everything. I think you just emotionally shut yourself off. So you're like, I don't want to feel this pain. So I'm going to wall it off and not let those feelings come again. Because they affect me and they affect the way I operate.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I would go farther. It's not even just that we don't want to feel the pain. It's that there's no time, and
yeah,
if you can't have that in the back of your mind when you're operating. I mean, sometimes you might have to step over your buddy's dead body you got to win the fight first, right? You got to win the fight, and then you can do the other shit. And it does become a habit, and it becomes like a survival instinct to block all that stuff out. And then we do this, we do all these things to transition out of the military. You know what I mean? Like getting your medical workups done, getting your resume put together, transferring your military service into college credit. We do all this shit, right? Do internships now, I guess they're doing. But there isn't one goddamn program out there that the DoD supports that teaches people how to be human beings again. Not one. There's not one that exists that the DoD currently funds or supports or anything like that. Nothing even approaching that, actually. It's all nonprofits that do that stuff.
Well, and I think that's done on purpose as well. Because again, like we talked about earlier, it's all about the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're just like, take your ass to the VA and they'll pump you full of pills, which, I had my first visit to the VA down here. They were like, I was going through my record, and they'd never seen anything like that because there's not a lot of special operators down here. They deal with, conventional or big Navy. And they were like, oh shit, we haven't seen anything like this, which to me, I was like, this is normal. All my friends are the same way. But they literally right away were like, hey, let's get you on some SSRIs. Let's put you on this. Let's put you on this. And I'm like, no, I don't want any pills. And they were like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I'll get my medical marijuana card. And I was like, I'll do that to, help with this. And I'm going to find other ways besides taking pills. And I'm telling you what, they for a month called me probably every other day trying to mail me pills. They're like, are you sure? Because what they want is a customer for life. And that's how they make their money.
Yeah. But you decided to go a different route. I think it's one that's becoming quite a bit more popular thanks to, I guess Rogan's talked about it a little bit. Marcus Capone's been a big leader in that industry as well. He and his wife Amber have done a lot of good work there. Heroic Hearts Project. There's a number of organizations out there that are helping. Can you tell me how, like, after you did, and I know there's especially after Ibogaine, that's really intense. There's a process where you're kind of reconstituting yourself as a human being after it for a couple of weeks, maybe sometimes a couple of months, right? But what was the difference you noticed from when you left your family to go do this stuff until the time you got back, and how did it progress as you started to come back into your own?
Well, I think, what the Ibogaine did for me, and everyone has a different experience on it. Can't pinpoint like, oh, this is what's going to happen, right? Because this happened to these other people, right?
You should come in with a plan, but not come in with expectations. That's good advice for that particular drug, and for ayahuasca as well. It's the same.
Yeah, you come in with an intention, like, hey, this is what I would like to get out of it. And for me, because we wrote down on a piece of paper. I believe it was like 3 intentions, and then you throw them into the fire before you go take the medicine. And mine, I pretty much made it pretty simple. I was like, I want to feel innocent again. As far as like, I looked at my kids and like they're laughing and they still have that joy in them. I'm like, dude, I don't have that. Like, I want that back so I can be a better father. So when I was going through the medicine, I had a very good experience. Like, I didn't throw up. I was calm. They said I didn't move a muscle the whole night. I had a big smile on my face because all it showed me, I definitely dealt with some stuff from childhood, just stuff between me and my dad that really cleared some things up. But then what really it showed me was like, I kept seeing these images of my family on the couch, like waving me back, like, come back to us. And it was like, I'm loved, and I think that was a big part of it as well. Like, I felt like I wasn't deserving of being around them. I was like, dude, I'm a bad person, just from stuff from our career. You're like, dude, you don't know what I've done. And it really just broke that for me and was like, no, I am needed. They want me to come back, and I would hear, you also have the audio, no, they're not visualizations, but I could hear like past conversations that I had with my kids and my wife as other stuff was going on. So it really like brought everything back, it just made me feel, I guess I came out of it. I'm like, dude, I'm nothing is really wrong with me. This is all I built it up in my own head. And it sort of cleared that for me. So when I came back home, my wife noticed a big difference. She was, you're sort of like you said, in that 3 month state.
Mm.
The drug is still sort of working through you. And sometimes, it lasts longer or shorter for other people. But I think for me, it was about 2 to 3 months, um, where you just sort of have this glow and you're like, all right, I'm in a new state. But I will say this, that glow does wear off. And reality does sort of smack you back in the face like, hey, welcome back. And you could easily fall right back into your old habits. So, the good thing that, because I went through Marcus and Amber,
Mm.
the VET program, and the good thing that they do after you take the Ibogaine and then the 5-MeO DMT, they spend about 3 days teaching you classes on how to keep that going without having to like go back and do the medicine again. They're like, hey, these are some good practices that you can do, because you will fall back into reality. You will, if you're not careful, you will go back into your old habits and sort of just go back into the same individual that you were before you showed up. So I made sure I practiced those habits as best I could, and obviously, that would, you know, slip sometimes, whether I was traveling or doing whatever. But the big thing for me is just creating a routine, a morning routine. When I get up, I made it a point last year. I was like, okay, I'm going to read through the whole Bible. And so I get up, I read a couple passages through the Bible every morning, and I talk to God. I'm just like, dude, help me get through today. Just help me be a good father, help me be a good husband. Keep these, whatever you want to call them, demons or whatever, like the anxiety, depression, all that stuff that I'm plagued with. I'm sure a lot of us are. Can fall back into it. I'm like, keep those from me. If those do start coming on, help me work through those
Mm.
without completely flatlining and going back into a depression.
Yeah.
So, and I've been, ever since I've been doing that, dude, I haven't had really any issues. Not saying it's been like smooth sailing, but I've been able to like bounce back each and every time right when I notice that's coming on. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing, is in establishing a routine. And then, obviously working out is huge.
Mm.
I do that every morning. I train. I personally train a couple people around here, and then my son is about to join the Marine Corps. So I'm getting him ready to go. So it's been those habits it gives me a purpose, and I think that's another thing is, and it's been overstated, like you find another purpose, which is easier said than done.
Right.
Those purposes can be small little purposes as well that can keep you going. You don't have to have some grand purpose like we had in the special operations, where it's like, yes, my purpose is to defend this country,
Mm.
go over there, kill the enemy. You can, minimize that to, hey, I'm going to spend time with my son, getting him ready for an hour each morning, right? And then you just start your day off from there.
Yeah. What they're teaching you there is, and this is a really good process for anybody, not just people going through bullshit. This is just, how human beings work, but they're teaching you how to contextualize the difference between cognition and emotion, right? So think about insecurity, for example. Insecurity is not an emotion, that's a cognition. It's a filter through which data pours. And then, you experience an emotion because of it. So uh, uh, it can go one way or another. The emotion that you're actually feeling is fear or anger or anxiety or something like that. Those are the emotions you're facing. But insecurity is the cognition. So it's how you're interpreting what you're actually feeling. So you get to choose, right? Like, so the fear and anxiety that you feel when in those situations, you can leave it alone, and the cognition will probably be insecurity, because that's how we work, right? It's an internalized motivator. But what you're supposed to do is address not the symptom, which is the cognition, not the insecurity. You address the underlying cause. I feel like I'm not ready to do this, to take this test or to do this interview. I don't feel like I'm strong enough to protect my family. I don't feel like I'm making enough money to do this. That's where the actual insecurity comes from. And the unfortunate part is, people don't see our fear and anxiety and all that stuff. All they see is the cognition. They only see the insecurity, and it's very unattractive and it's off-putting. And you can read it right on somebody's fucking face. You know what I mean? and it's not the kind of thing that inspires confidence. So if you're a man in a relationship with a family, it's just like being the president. Like your job is to project strength and confidence. That's your job, right? Aside from provide and protect, that's your core job. So these are lessons that you don't have to have been to war for them to be relevant to you. And I think it's really good to have conversations like this so people know about it, because you can use it in your own life. That's just being able to understand how the process works. Now you feel insecure and you're like, oh, why am I feeling insecure about this? That dude's got more of something than I have. Cool. Well, I can't change that. I'm just going to go get more of it or whatever else, or find my, where I'm better. You know what I mean? And then lean into that. That's what you should do. Instead, we just sit with our insecurity and become bitter.
Yeah, because, well, that's like we talked about earlier. That's the comfortable thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's okay. I'm going to sit in this and wallow in my misery, and I don't want to go and try and find another route to make this better because that's uncomfortable to me because you're insecure, and that's where we come back to. People need to get used to getting comfortable being uncomfortable to better themselves. And again, that's easier said than done, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's little practices that people can do, and it's even like I said, working out is one thing. I'm always like, I bring these people over to my garage, and I'm like, hey, I'll write it out for them, and it's a dick dragger, and they look at it and they're like, dude, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, there's no time limit. I'm like, but you will get all this done. It will get done within the next hour.
Mm.
And sure enough, they suffer through it, but at the end, it's always the same thing. They're like, dude, I feel like $100 because I pushed myself past the limit that I didn't think I was going to be able to do. And that's just one example. That's just working out. You can use that same attitude in every other aspect of your life. Perfect example for me is the most uncomfortable thing for me to do was doing what I'm doing now, which is talking to you on the podcast. I was like, dude, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to be talking to anybody. And it wasn't because I hated it. It's because I was uncomfortable. I was like, and I had my own insecurities. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to, I'm going to say the wrong thing, or if I look stupid or whatever, how are my peers going to look at me? I've learned to you just let that all go. And you're like, dude, just be yourself. And you will grow as a human being if you just continue to be yourself and face those things those obstacles that are put in your way, or they're not even looking at them as obstacles. They're just things that are put there to help you grow. And, I don't know. It's like you said, they have a hard time doing that. And it's really hard to, we can sit there and talk about this, and it's the same like with resilience. People give classes on resilience. I'm like, well, you can't really teach resilience unless you go out there and practice it and put yourself through situations where you can actually build on.
Yeah, there's no book you can read to teach you resilience. That's not a thing.
No, you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah, and I think that shame thing you mentioned before, I think is really important. I think that's one that any combat veteran is going to probably have an experience with that, and I think it needs to be addressed immediately. That would be one of the first things if I were somebody listening to this. That would be one of the first things that I would address, and I think we've all felt it, and it's hard to kind of contextualize it. I'm not even sure I would call it shame, really. It's because I'm not ashamed of anything I did, right? But
no,
I am. But at the time, I was very anxious and concerned about how people who didn't have my experience might feel about me if they knew what I did, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like you've got this vision of me, like you understand, generally speaking, what it means to be a protector, but you haven't seen me when shit hits the fan, right? It's a different human being out there, just tearing people to pieces and feeling nothing. You know what I mean? And I think that's where I think we've made a mistake. People have written about this so-called moral injury from having to do crazy things in combat. And I don't think that's what it is at all. I think it's about our self-image and how we're worried that people might think we're fucking crazy if they know what we were up to over there. But it's not crazy. We're ordinary people in a crazy situation. That's the reality of the situation.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the truth. And, I had those issues as well, obviously coming out with the 2 years of getting smeared in the media as some psychopath and whatever else. So then when I was doing interviews, I was like, well, I can't really speak. I can't tell the truth about like, yeah, this is what we do, or this is what I did. And it wasn't, it wasn't out of hate. It was my job. And, yeah, I've killed a lot of people, but I was afraid. I was like, well, then people are definitely going to look at me like I'm a psychopath if I say these things, and it took me a while to get over that. It's funny. You talk about the shame base, and I had a good conversation with my buddies. We were talking about, the suicide rate, among the special operators. And he was like, why do you think that's happening? Because I don't think anybody really has any issues of what they did overseas in combat. All of us wanted to do that job.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I was like, I honestly think a big part of it is the shame factor that we face while we're in the community, where you're constantly striving to be the best. You're constantly striving to like prove yourself, like, hey, I belong here on a day-to-day basis. In the teams, it's like earn your trident every day, right? It's like you have to earn that on a daily basis. And then if you make one little mistake, we live, especially our community is very shame-based.
Mm.
It's like, oh, look at this fucking idiot. You could build 1,000 bridges and then you mess up one thing and they're like, and that's what you're known for.
Yeah.
And I think people have a hard time, that's the way we live for 20 years, at least for me. And then when you get out, you still have that to where you're like, okay, I have to be perfect. I have to be, the man of the house. Dude, I didn't do my taxes. I didn't, my wife took care of all that shit. So like when I get out, I'm watching her do these things, trying to help. And she, my wife's like, listen, I got it. You have no idea what's going on. You don't know what's going on with this and this. And that's all shame, like self-shame. Cause I'm like, well, then I'm not good enough. And I think that's with a lot of individuals, they go through that. They just don't want to like admit it.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, you're not expected to know how to operate as a normal civilian when you get out after 20 years. Like, and you got to stop putting all that pressure on yourself to just give yourself time to build up to that. But I think you have to live and learn through that stuff. I mean, cause I think a lot of us are built the same.
Yeah. I mean, we're as comfortable as we are with being uncomfortable. Having to start over and rebuild in your 40s is not the easiest thing to do. You know what I mean? It's kind of fucked up, to be honest, to ask people to do that. But here, there is a roadmap for it now, and there's a lot of resources. I mean, not from the government. The government is shit and always will be shit. But there's plenty of people out there like Amber and Marcus Capone. Dr. Kate Pate is out there doing some good work as well. There's a lot of people out there doing good work, trying to, help people get back to where they were before, because, as is the case with any country, the greatest resource we have is our people. And
yeah,
if we let the best among us fall to the wayside because, it's too hard to fix them or to bring them back, that would be a goddamn shame, frankly. And I think that would be I think we're seeing it, and it's been a detriment to our country.
Oh, for sure. And then you got to look at, so like you said, there are people out there doing the right thing, but those are like door kickers helping door kickers, right? We're taking care of our own, because we know that either the leadership's not going to do anything about it or the government. So we are doing the right thing. It's a rough road. That's all. I mean, we have to constantly keep fighting to help other veterans when they get out, and get them on the right path.
Yeah, it's a good message. The job's not over when you're fixed, right? You got two hands for a reason: one to pull yourself up and one to pull the next guy up with you. That's how it works here.
Exactly.
Look, this has been a really good conversation. I appreciate your time today. Tell everybody where they can find you on the interwebs and where they can find Pipe Hitter and all that stuff.
Yeah, so obviously Instagram, Eddie_Gallagher. I'm on there. And then pipehitterfoundation.org is our nonprofit. You can check that out. That has everybody that we've helped or we are currently helping in their situations. And you can donate money to an individual or just to the Pipe Hitter Foundation in general. And then I'm also on theeddie.gallagher.com. That pretty much has everything that I'm involved in as far as, I teach shooting. I got a couple other things going on as well.
Sweet. Well, Everybody go check out Eddie Gallagher if you haven't already. Thanks for coming today, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, brother.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
man.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. And thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.